Whoa! Welcome back to the studio, Ryan, aka BloodShot Airbrushing, and we are back for round 2 of the Boba Fett helmet from the good old wars, the Star Wars that happened a long time ago in a galaxy far away. You know the drill. If you missed video 1, go back and see it. Quick recap, we got the helmet to this stage, which was pretty much masking it, sketching it out, transferring it, and cutting it. And now we are going to apply some color by sort of peeling it in a paint by number fashion, kind of, sort of. We're going to do the red first because the way it's kind of laid out is you spray the red, you remask it, and you can kind of leave that till the end. And that'll work as a nice buffer zone to get some of these other areas sprayed quickly and effectively. So let's do that quickly and effectively. I'll get on in here and show you guys the tools that I'll be using today. Some colors that we're going to be running through, and I got my masking tape and my pinstripe tape. Rulers are still going to probably come into play a little bit. I've got my cleaning solution for my water-based paints, and actually let's grab the thinners / cleaning solution for my urethane paints. And I've got pencils and pens and Xacto knives galore, Q-tips for cleaning, paintbrushes for mixing and cleaning, tunes, gotta have the tunes, and I've got some stencils, templates, my favorite French Curve, and now this one was one that was cut a long time ago and used for cracks on sort of a castle. And I did some lava using this one as well. And I thought maybe we could use this to get some of the damage, some of the battle damage we got going on this helmet here. And we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna start off with the red because it works as a nice buffer zone in between the other colors. And you may think that this helmet is 2 tones of green. We've got the 1 tone, and then we've got the dark tone. Well, there's actually a 3rd tone. So this and this is the same color. This is like a really, really dark green. And this is sort of a medium tone. Yeah, you get up there close, man, and you will see 3 different tones. I've got my handy tablet out, and this can give us a better view as well as to some of these colors. But you look here, and man, that is definitely a darker green than what we got going on up there. So we're going to peel the red. It's going to be easy enough just to mask it when we're done. Pretty straightforward. The colors I'm going to be using for the red, I've got my Autoborn Autowear Createx red. I'm going to be mixing that with a little bit of brown to darken it up to get that bit of more of a maroon. And I'm actually going to add a little bit of this iridescent candy apple red, which when you look at it, it's got kind of a purple sheen to it. And that's just going to help to get some of the metallic feel out of this paint. Then we've got the green, so we're going to use our regular emerald green, which is just pastel green, and I'm going to be mixing some purples and some blues to darken that up. And then we got silver. I've got my yellow, which I'm going to be using to kind of mix with some white to get this kind of beige color. And then we've got the base color, which is the army green, and we've got the client's traditional yellow that we did on his other pieces, so we're going to match that when we get doing the graphic on the other side of the helmet. And then for any pieces that I want to save, I'm just going to slap them up on the glass like so, Jedi style. This way they are safe and sound and ready to be laid back down once the paint is good and dry. I think I'm going to start with about 5 drops of this. And I think I'm going to add 1 drop of this for now. think we'll do 1 drop of this, and we'll give it a bit of a mix and see what we got. See what kind of witch's brew we got happening over here.
And to mix it thoroughly, I like to use a paintbrush, add a little bit of thinner at a time till you get the right consistency, and pinch that needle tip while you're applying some air, and that'll help mix up anything at the bottom of the cup.
And grab something that you can test on. We're not really using this one anymore.
And when you're doing your test sample, don't be afraid to lay it on there nice and heavy. You do want to see the end result of this color.
I like it. I think it's going to darken up quite a bit over top of the green. And that's your next step.
When testing your color on your surface, I always recommend starting in a less conspicuous area, and this way you can build it up a little heavier, and if you do have peeling problems in the future, well, it's in a less conspicuous area.
I dig it.
And if you dig it, then you are ready to hit it with a bit more of a dry spray, and this will help to alleviate any peeling problems. And here you'll see me going in with the 50-50 rule, not extending myself too far, and making sure that my next pass overlaps my last pass by 50% and keep building it up that way. And again, let's talk about peeling problems. One of the main reasons why your paint peels, especially these water-based acrylics, is you get that paint a little bit too wet, and what happens is the surface dries and skins over. Well, underneath it is still wet, so you think it's dry, you mask over top, and what happens is it sticks to the masking tape and not your surface. Hair dryer will help as well. Hit that with some heat and some hot air, but being as this is Star Wars, we'll just use the Force. As you can see, some nice good coverage over the entire surface. Getting that paint about a ½ inch past my mask line for consistent color.
You're right, now with a crazy thinned out white. I hope you can see how thin this is. It's almost as thin as milk. And here I'll do a little example for you. This is just a quick panel. Primed, painted, cleared, and wet sanded. So very similar to the surface that we're working on. I can get in there with my white and do some super tight lines, but if I pull too far back, this is gonna spider web very easily. So it's really about multiple passes, and really we're not building up too much white, we just want to build up some highlights, and this is kind of how we're gonna do it, with a super transparent white. Alright. So again, keeping that this is our top edge. And we don't want a straight line across the whole thing. You want some variances. Just that easy. Again, our top edge. So we're just going to go in and kick just a little bit of white to show that that top edge has some highlights on it. Easy breezy. Spin around.
Set her up. Make sure that the area that you're going to paint is well within reach, and you'll notice I do a couple passes with just air, making sure I'm on point before I ever lay down any paint.
You want to add some little inconsistencies or some damage. You can have some highlights where it's a little brighter. Actually, I don't mind that highlight that you're kind of catching from the light, so you can pull that right on down if you'd like.
Using real world reflections to your benefit, and again, using this transparent white, this allows for you to sort of lay down a line. If it's not exactly where you want it, you can make quick adjustments and pull it to where you need it, just like a Jedi Master.
So that's going to build our top edge. And you can see, guys, I'll bring it a little closer for you. I'm pretty much trying to spray a line, having it blend a little bit to the top, blend a little to the bottom. And what we're going to do is we're going to mask that with some pinstripe tape, do a little bit of dark, and that's going to give us a nice solid edge. And if you want to add some defects in the surface, you want some pits, you can add some pits with your highlights, and we'll go in with some darks and shadow them in. These are going to have quite a bit of damage on this, but keep in mind, a lot of this paint's going to be chipped off, so don't spend a lot of time in areas where you're going to be going over top of it with silver to make it look like there's no paint there whatsoever. Something to consider. Now we're going to want a couple areas where it's just a little bit darker. You've got this edge kind of combing over top, so we're going to blast in just a tiny little bit of dark right there. And same with right here.
And using a transparent sepia, lining myself up and in nice light layers, building it up nice and slow till I'm happy. Just enough to give me that lip.
And for now, that'll be good. Next thing we're going to want to do is with our pinstripe tape, we're going to mask this bad boy up to save our highlights so we can add just a little bit of dark.
And a point that I'd like to stress here when using this plastic pinstripe tape is not to pull too hard on it when you're laying it down. You're basically just guiding it into place. If you pull too hard, this stuff will stretch, and laying there dormant on your piece, it will have the tendency to pull back to its original form, and that can cause some problems. And then for cutting, I just lay my blade at the angle I need it, and then just pull that tape against that blade. That way you're not putting any cuts into the actual surface. And repeat until you've got your top edges all masked.
Alright, now with a thinned out sepia, and again, even on paper, this states that's how thin it is. And we're just going to go in ever so lightly, just add a tone to this.
You have to look hard. You can barely even see the paint being applied. That's how little I'm using. It really doesn't take much.
Really not much. You're not adding a lot of paint. Just enough so that you can see that there are some angles being created. It doesn't take much.
Subtlety is key. A good rule to consider is it's easy to add more paint, hard to take it
off. Some of our
off.
scratches, we can go in with a dark over top.
Nice and tight to the surface.
Make them look a little more 3D, some dents going on.
And again, you don't want to have a real consistent line. That makes it kind of look fake. So have some inconsistencies. Have some places that are darker than others, places that are lighter than others, and this will really help with your 3D effect. And then for your little divots, like to start in close and then sort of pull the airbrush away. That gives you a nice tight dot with a nice little fade. Always keeping in mind where your light source is coming from and making sure that your shadows sit in the proper area in relation to it.
A little bit darker to the bottom edge. Just a touch.
Again, just enough to show that there is an edge there, a little bit of a lip. And we're just going to blast through the second half of this side. As you can see, this side is a little more simpler in comparison to the other side in relation to its shadows and where they sit, but I'm hoping we speed it up and you can kind of see the application of paint a little bit better. And spinning on back to side one, here's where I was talking about these shadows are a little more complicated, so you really got to play with it. Really got to think of how these shapes would cast their shadows. Some of them are protruding a little further out, so their shadows will be a little bigger, a little darker, closer to the object, and as the shadow fades away, well, so does the tone. I think you kind of get the gist. So I think we're just gonna speed through the back half of this, and that will conclude the red section of this helmet. And I always recommend let it sit overnight before masking, and you'll see I kind of made a bit of a goof. There is green that goes underneath this vent piece. I painted it red. So we're going to go in with a green. Now this whole back area is going to be a different tone of green anyways, so I'm not going to go back in with my base tone. I'm just going to bring it all back to a color that I'm happy with. And with this color, it was, as you can kind of see, a bit of a a bit of a concoction. I just keep adding drops of paint. If it's too dark, I add a little bit of white. If it's too light, I add a little bit of green, a little bit of blue, a little bit of brown, until I get the tone and the color that I'm after. And that's kind of how it goes. I don't know that there's a proper recipe. You just mix it till you get it. And 50-50 rule, applying this paint in a nice even fashion. And then we'll do a crosshatch where we do our next 50% at the opposing direction. And again, this just helps to give a nice even coverage. Consistency is key. And if you actually listen carefully, you can hear how thick the paint is. When you get that sort of a spraying, spitting sort of sound, you know you're running some thick paint. And whenever I want some coverage power, I go for the opaques. And thicker is better. Thin stuff, you'll be sitting there for hours trying to lay it in there and get some good coverage. So keep that in mind. Transparency for details, opaque for coverage. And I actually mixed up a color I thought was a little bit too dark. As I sprayed the one side, I started to notice this is getting a little too dark. So keep it consistent. I just sprayed the back half of the one side and then did the same thing to this side. And then once I got to this side and I applied a lighter green, well, it was too light. So I mixed up a third tone, something in the middle, and went over both. And again, what I did to one side, I did to the other. Just keep it consistent. As I said earlier, consistency is key. And then taking that same dark green that I used on the darker panels, I've thinned that out so it's now transparent using my Fantastik cleaning / thinning solution, and we're just going to go in here and blast in some shadows, adding to the 3D effect by making these look like they are countersunk below the red, and then going in and giving a few dents here and there with just a quick shadow, and then we'll go in and hit some highlights right now. And because this has some angles and our helmet doesn't, we are going to use our highlights to build up some angles that don't exist. It's really all just about tricking the eye to trick the mind to see something that isn't actually there. And what's more Jedi than that? Here we're adding a couple more divots and a little highlight to our dent. See, building it up nice and slow, transparent layers, and you can kind of tone it back with some greens if you do get her a little too heavy. But if you keep in mind where your light source is coming from, you can pull off some fairly realistic effects with just a highlight and a shadow. Pretty cool. Hope you guys are learning a little something. Feel free to drop me a line if you have any questions, if there's anything I missed. Again, just punching that dent a little darker. Wherever our scratch is, well, right over top of that would have a little bit of a shadow to make it look like it is embossed or countersunk. And have fun with it. Have fun with it. I think that's actually the most important part, because if you're not having fun with it, well, then it just becomes a day job. And that's not why we're here. We want to be expressive. We want to be creative. You can see some of the bullet ricochets, saber scratches, and all the highlights and shadows. That's giving it some 3 dimensions. Man, we ain't done yet. We still have full-on laser blast hits and taser strikes that we will be painting. But for now, we're just going to lay in the big colors, the big shapes, carefully peeling back these sections and saving them so that we can stick them back down later. And because we've got the red as a buffer, we can simply skirt it and move on to the next color.
Alright, so for color reference, I don't know, man. This really isn't doing much for me. I mean, if you look at screenshots from the movie, it looks a little more
metallic gold,
not so beige plastic. So I've mixed up a tone. It's kind of another witch's brew. I didn't keep track of this one. I just kind of kept adding colors until I got the tone that I was after. And it still might be too yellow. We'll see how it looks over top of this green. I think we can work with that.
That being a mixture of my Indian yellow, burnt umber, a little bit of white, and metallic gold.
Alright, we'll let that dry, and then we'll come back and we'll mask it, and then start do our highlights and shadows and all that good stuff.
Moving on.
Alright, another handy little trick. As you can see, I've pulled the masking off here. I've sprayed it black. Now, I am going to put the masking back on here, but rather than putting it back on there to cut it, because I'm going to want to save it to get some shadows underneath it, just going to take a regular piece of tracing paper. I'm going to grab these lines that I've already drafted that I'm real happy with, so I don't got to redraw it again. And I'm going to cut a super quick stencil out of my tracing paper. And this way, I've got an overcrowding situation. Alright. I always want to do that. Make a mess. I like making messes.
Yeah, alright, back to the project at hand. So I'm just going to cut out all of these interior lines. I can fold it back for the exterior lines. And then we are ready to spray.
It's a nicely thinned out transparent white. Can line up your edges.
Taking your time to get it right. And then you can go ahead and spray your white. Nice and light. And don't let the bed bugs bite. Again, building it up in light layers. Once you get one section done, you can fold her over and work the next and keep on going until you've got your dimensions.
I'm just going to use my Auto Air Autoborn Opaque White straight out the bottle. I'm not going to thin it out at all. I want this to cover and I want it to dry quickly.
And we're just going to build her up again. Nice and light layers, not trying to do it too quickly. We just got to fill this small little shape. And we can do that nice and tight. For the bigger areas, I just got a quick skirt. As you can see, I'm a little further away and just blast in that area.
The next little area is peeled, and I'm just going in with a sepia straight out the bottle. And I'm just going to lightly start toning some of these areas to show some dimension. Light tones. Don't take much.
And using these transparent light tones means that it will dry a heck of a lot faster and less chance of peeling once you start remasking for your next layer. Here we're just hitting the top edge so that once we peel the layer next to it, it will have that highlight already built into it.
Here, this is gonna be my darkest area.
So go ahead and build that up a little darker, but keep in mind how the light would be blocked and how the shadow would be cast. A little darker closer to the surface and a little lighter as it moves away.
And it's very much just a sort of peel by number, going from your darkest area to your lightest, saving your highlights.
Oh, and making sure that you have indeed cut these lines before you start peeling. And again, just hitting it with a little bit of a tone and then moving on to the next area, peeling it a little bit of a tone and on to the next area. And here you actually see, bing, right there in the center, I had a bit of a peeling problem. Ain't gonna bother me none because we are gonna make some defects, so I just played with it. I embellished it a little bit and worked it into the design. And there you saw me using, again, some pinstripe tape to map out and save a highlight in order to get a front edge. And then go in with some tones to make it look realistic.
Alright, I'm pretty happy with that. Next would be silver. I'm going to go ahead and peel this and peel this. I'm going to mask off the golden area that we just sprayed and get ready for the next layer.
And as you can see, I just mapped it out with some pinstripe tape and filled it in with some masking tape. And here we're just doing the same thing, 50-50 rule with the silver. However,
see that?
silver actually works best over black. Figured the green would suffice.
Silver.
And it does.
Yar.
Arr, yes, silver. Silver and gold. A pirate's two best friends. So here we are applying our dark tones. Now this is actually a mixture of 1 drop black, 1 drop brown, 2 drops of purple. And that gives me a nice sort of even gray, good coverage power, but not the harshness that you get out of a pure black. And again, kind of a paint by number process where you're just peeling your darkest areas first and moving to your lightest. Here I'm using a straight edge shield to build up some dimensions by just showing a little bit of a shadow from one to the other. Painting in some reflective lines on a bit of an angle just makes it look a little more reflective, like a sort of dull steel surface. And have some fun with it. It's most important that you guys have some fun with it. You know, don't take it too serious. It's not what life's about. Yes, this journey, this roller coaster of life, you only get one go round. You don't get another turn. So you may as well enjoy the ride. And there you have it, folks. My representation of dull sort of steel. And we can go ahead and peel her back like Christmas time. And using the force, revealing our last big color change. And we're just gonna slap on some skirts. And using the force once again, we will black out our visor and get ready for the last and final surface, which is our base green. And we're just gonna add some tones to make it look like these are some holes. Again, playing with the way the light would hit it, a little darker to the top, playing with a little lighter to the bottom, like so. And now we're ready to peel the rest of this tape to do the rest of the drop shadows. But when you're a Jedi Master, no tape is sticky enough to resist the power of the Force. I think that's how it works. Just disintegrates, turns into dust. Just like so many of our beloved childhood superheroes. Or no, wait. That's the wrong universe. Wrong faraway galaxy. Onward and upward to infinity and beyond. And here you can see me just tackling the last remaining bit of drop shadows using that same mixture of my black, brown, and purple thinned out so I can go in with multiple passes to build it up nice and slow. I'm sure I said it earlier, it's easy to add more paint, hard to take the paint away. So building up in these transparent layers allows you to gauge it as you go. Take a step back, take a breath, have a good look at your process. It's always a good opportunity to clean any dry paint off of your needle, that infamous tip dry, and just take it in slow layers, frequently stepping back just so you can have a good overall view. It's kind of easy to get tunnel vision on one little section. And for this little section, just giving it a little bit of tone to the top edge to make it look like it wraps around. Checking my reference, also a good idea to frequently check your reference. And we're gonna tease you guys with a little bit of scorch marks for the top of this lid. But this video has already gotten a little longer than I anticipated. Trying to give you guys a little bit more real time so you can kind of see how I tackle these. And we will continue with all this damage in video number 3. All that battle damage I promised you from the good old ray guns. We got the laser hits, the phaser blasts, the proton strikes, and some chip paint. So stay tuned. If you have any questions, feel free to drop me a line. I'm always here to help, and I know I spend a lot of time goofing around. So feel free. If there's anything I missed, which is probably a lot, hit me up. I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And again, all you're seeing here is me doing some scorch marks from one of those phaser laser blaster hits. And a last dent or two before I bid you adieu. I hope you learned a thing or two. And we'll finish it up with just a little bit more weathering around the back of this helmet, making it look a little dirty and aged. And man, this thing's got wings of its own, does it not? Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Till next time. Pew pew. And feel free to hit up the BloodShot Spreadshirt page, grab yourself up a BloodShot uniform, and support the cause. And until the next time, like, follow, subscribe. Thanks for coming along for the ride. And don't forget, we've got the airbrushing hacks, airbrushing for beginners, and plenty of tutorials. Tell the world the BloodShot Army is here to spray. Cheers.